Hey guys, tonight we're going back to a time of proud uniforms and paper-thin promises, of marching bands and muffled dissent, of a nation desperate to prove itself again. It's June 1940, and you're standing in the sticky heat of Rome. The streets are packed with a crowd that doesn't know whether to cheer or cringe. On the balcony above, Benito Mussolini bellows into the microphone like an actor hungry for applause. Italy has just declared war on Britain and France. You cheer. In the crowd, you didn't exactly come here on purpose. You were just trying to get a good loaf of bread, maybe a cup of espresso, if the ration gods smiled on you. But now you're surrounded by black shirts, waving flags, and shouting "Deucey deuce" like it means something. And here's the thing, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening now. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've seen Mussolini before, of course. He's on every wall, every coin, every newspaper. But today, he seems ... excited. Like a man finally getting the drama he ordered. He shouts that Italy will reclaim its Roman glory, that the Mediterranean is Italy's sea, and that war will be swift and glorious. You know better. Your uncle fought in the First World War. He came home with half a leg and a full bottle of grappa. He used to mutter about Austrians, trenches, and mud so thick it stole boots off your feet. You watched him flinch every time thunder cracked. But that war wasn't Mussolini's. He's got a different plan. You glance around. Some people look thrilled, young men in tight uniforms, old veterans hoping to matter again. But there's fear, too. Shopkeepers with closed mouths, housewives pulling their children away from the crowd. No one wants to say it out loud, but you all know, Italy's army isn't ready. Planes are decades behind. Tanks are thin-skinned, tin cans, and soldiers are marching with rusted rifles and stiff leather boots from the last war. Still, propaganda works. There's music, confetti, and a burning sense of something huge just beginning. You don't know it yet, but that something is about to swallow you whole. The next morning, posters go up. The draft is expanding. You check the wall, and sure enough, your name is on the list. You've been selected for service in the Regio Esercito, Italy's Royal Army. No deferments, no excuses. Your mother doesn't say anything. She just hands you a small canvas bag, already packed, extra socks, a crust of bread, and a rosary. She's always been like that, quiet, efficient, preparing for the worst, while hoping you'll be spared. Your father is dead. He died when you were 10, crushed in a marble quarry outside Carrara. You can still remember the way the priest fumbled through his funeral. The stifling heat, the sticky smell of lilies. Now you sit at the kitchen table, while your younger brother tries not to cry. Your mother crosses herself and says, "Be smart. Don't volunteer for anything. That's your only real advice. That, and keep your boots dry at the barracks. It's a mess." Recruits are arriving by the dozens, all shapes and ages. You meet one guy from Napoli who can't stop singing, and another from Torino who keeps rewriting Mussolini's speeches with crude jokes. You're issued a uniform that's 2 sizes off, a helmet that wobbles like a teacup, and a rifle that looks like it was last cleaned during the Great War. But here's a quirky truth. Italy's military was so poorly supplied that some divisions trained with wooden guns. That's right, wooden. Because nothing says we're ready for world domination like shouting bang and pretending. Drills begin at sunrise. They teach you how to march, salute, dig trenches, and most importantly not complain too loudly. You eat what they call soup, which is really just boiled cabbage with occasional beans. One day you're handed a slice of salami. It's so rare the whole mess hall goes silent, like they're witnessing a miracle. And the jokes help. Your bunkmates tease each other constantly. One of them starts calling you Pharaoh because your face wrinkles like ancient papyrus when you squint at maps. The nickname sticks. Then come the speeches, endless speeches. Officers shout about honor, glory, and Italy's sacred destiny. But behind the bombast, there's anxiety. Italy's entry into the war wasn't exactly necessary. Most of the country was still recovering from the Great Depression. The military was stretched thin after Ethiopia and Spain. Even the generals knew Italy wasn't ready. Historians still argue whether Mussolini believed in the war or just saw it as his only way to stay relevant. Some say he expected a quick German victory and wanted a seat at the table. Others think he was chasing nostalgia, desperate to paint himself as a new Caesar. What's certain is that he underestimated everything: how fast the Allies would respond, how weak Italy's logistics were, and how brutal the coming years would be. By August, you're being trained for mountain warfare. Italy is looking east. You're told your unit is being sent to the Balkans to support operations in Greece. The officers make it sound like a holiday. You'll march in, liberate the oppressed Greeks from British influence, and enjoy the sea breeze. By October, you and your mates aren't convinced. If this is a holiday, the Torino guy says, then why did they give us extra bullets? The night before deployment, you sneak a cigarette on the roof. The stars are brighter than you've ever seen. You think about Rome, about your mother lighting a candle in some church, about your brother pretending to be asleep. You think about how everything feels like a story you're being shoved into. Then the whistle blows. It's time to go. You wake up in a train car packed wall to wall with the sweaty, uncomfortable bodies of your fellow soldiers, all of you heading south. The stench is considerable, a mix of unwashed uniforms, old boots, and fear. It's amazing how fear smells. Like wet wool sometimes. You'd give anything for a window that opens, but the only ventilation comes from the occasional crack in the door. Someone's snoring. Someone else is humming a hymn. You're just trying not to pass out. The trip takes 3 days. You're fed exactly twice, a heel of bread and a tin of sardines. You try not to eat both at once. You don't know when the next meal is coming. It becomes a point of pride to stretch out the sardines as long as possible. One of the guys from Naples claims his nonna used to make pasta sauce with sardine oil. The rest of the car groans, mostly because they're hungry, and that sounded delicious. When the train finally groans to a stop, you're in very southern Italy. It's humid, the kind of humidity that sticks to your lungs, but it's also buzzing with movement. More soldiers, stacks of supplies, loud orders, and a general sense of organized panic. There's a rumor going around that you're heading to Albania to prepare for an invasion of Greece. The Greek government has already refused Mussolini's demands, and everyone's pretending that a full invasion isn't already in motion. One officer tells your unit, "This will be over in 2 weeks. You'll be home by Christmas." Classic. Another whispers under his breath, "Bring extra socks and don't drink the water." That second guy, he becomes your favorite. The waves are choppy, and, as expected, half the unit is vomiting before you even lose sight of Italy's coast. You lean over the side and watch the shoreline shrink. For a second, the thought hits you. What if I just jumped? But the sea is too wide and land is too far. So you hold on. Landing in Albania is chaotic. You expect docks. You get a muddy beach, makeshift ramps, and shouting. Soldiers are everywhere, some unloading crates, others trying to pitch tents in the rain. And the mud. It grabs your boots and doesn't let go. You spend the first night standing in it, watching water drip through the seams of your thin canvas shelter. The Italian army is supposed to be a machine, but on the ground, it's barely functioning. Supply chains are a joke. Rifles jam. Radios don't work. You're issued a half Mapius, half and, told to follow orders. Which orders? From whom? No one knows. Then there's your uniform. A wool tunic designed for parade grounds, not Balkan winters. The first real cold snap hits that night. You try to sleep, but your breath fogs in front of your face and your teeth chatter until dawn. The next morning, you begin the march. You trudge forward through forests and ridges, crossing into unfamiliar territory. The invasion begins, and it immediately goes badly. The terrain is brutal, steep, rocky, and freezing. Vehicles can't move. Horses slip. You're carrying everything on your back: rations, gear, ammunition. The enemy isn't where your commanders thought they'd be. Greek forces strike with sharp precision, ambushing supply lines and seizing high ground. Their soldiers know the land, yours. One morning, you open a ration tin labeled meat, just meat. It smells like pencil shavings and regret. You eat it anyway. Everyone does. Here's a historical fact you'll wish you didn't know. During the Greek campaign, Italian rations were so poor that some soldiers tried boiling their leather straps for broth. You're not quite there yet. One night, you're digging a shallow trench when a fellow soldier drops beside you. He's pale, shaking. "I drank the river water," he mutters. "I didn't boil it." You look at your own canteen. You boiled it, most of it, but the fire wasn't strong. You start to worry. That night, by morning, half your unit is doubled over, groaning, and yet orders keep coming. Move here, march there, hold the line. You'd love to hold the line. You'd love to hold the line if you had any idea where it was. As weeks pass, you adjust, not because things get better, but because you lower your expectations. You learn to sleep sitting up. You figure out how to dry socks over a tiny fire. You memorize the exact point where your rifle jams and how to unjam it in 4 seconds. Flat. One day, while scouting near a ravine, you stumble upon a small farmhouse. It looks abandoned. You and 2 others go in. You don't ask how the floorboard was so conveniently loose. You just eat the olives like they're diamonds. "Should we leave something in return?" one guy jokes. He leaves a sardine tin, neatly cleaned and placed on the shelf. It becomes a running joke. When in doubt, trade in fish. In December, the snow arrives and you're starting to get used to the cold. Not in a comfortable way more, like the way you get used to a toothache. It never quite stops hurting, but it becomes part of the rhythm of your days. You've survived the Greek campaign, barely, and now your unit is being transferred again. Rumor has it you're heading to Yugoslavia, specifically Montenegro. The official orders say peacekeeping. The unofficial whispers say partisan hunting. You'd rather be doing neither. The Balkans are nothing like the maps back home. Every hill looks like the next. Every village is a maze of crumbling stone walls. And every road is just a narrow track where ox carts go to die. You bounce along in a rattling truck beside Carlo, who's added never trust a truck with more rust than paint to his growing survival list. You pass through villages that are silent and suspicious. Old women stand in doorways, staring. Children peek from behind fences. No one waves. No one smiles. The partisans are everywhere and nowhere. They don't wear uniforms. They don't march in lines. They melt into forests, strike at night, blow up bridges, and vanish before dawn. You spend days guarding roads, nights listening for footsteps, and weeks wondering who in the next village might be working with the enemy. You learn to mistrust everyone, and here's the truth. No one says out loud. Half the Italian soldiers admire the partisans. They're fighting for their land, their families. You're occupying a country that doesn't want you, under a regime you didn't vote for, eating food you'd never choose. Quirky detail for the night. The Italian army in the Balkans was so desperate to gain favor with locals that they sometimes hosted film nights in town squares, showing old Mussolini propaganda movies dubbed into Serbo. You attended one once. It rained halfway through and shorted the projector. The audience applauded. Your commanding officer, Capato Ferraro, is a nervous man with a big mustache and small boots. He speaks fluent nonsense and always has a map. Even when you're not going anywhere, strategic positioning is key, he says, standing on a rock, gesturing like a conductor. We're guarding a goat trail, Carlo mutters. Strategic goats, maybe. Still, you do what you're told. Patrol this stretch, guard that road, inspect that bridge for sabotage. Sometimes you find nothing. Other times, one afternoon, you discover a collapsed supply truck, smoke still, curling from the engine, crates scattered down a hillside. No sign of the driver. You climb down, rifle raised. The contents are spilled. Canned beans, shoes, and miraculously a crate of cigarettes. The beans are mostly intact. The shoes are mismatched. The cigarettes become currency. That night, you trade 2 for a clean blanket and the rest for the luxury of not having to stand guard in the freezing morning. A small win. You collect them when you can. Then comes the worst day yet. You're sent to escort a suspicious cargo. From a small rail outpost, you arrive to find a dozen prisoners, men and women, tied up, accused of helping partisans. A German officer is already there, tall, immaculate, silent. He doesn't explain. He just hands you a list and gestures to load them into a truck. One woman speaks fluent Italian. She stares at you, not pleading, just ... staring, like she's daring you to say something. But you don't. You look down. You help lift her into the truck. That night, you don't sleep. Not because of the cold, but because you're starting to wonder what line, if any, you won't cross. Historians still argue how much the average Italian soldier knew or admitted about the deportations and executions during the occupation. Some say the truth was hidden. Others say everyone knew but pretended otherwise. Either way, the guilt lingered long after the war ended. Carlo starts carrying a notebook. Not his joke lists something else. You catch him writing in it during downtime, he says. He's keeping track of names. If we live, he says, someone should remember them. You nod. Not yet. One evening, your patrol takes shelter in a half-burned barn outside Nixik. There's hay on the floor, holes in the roof, and an empty wine bottle in the corner. You try to sleep. Instead, you listen to the wind rattling through broken slats and wonder how many people hid here before you. Winter turns to spring. Not that it helps much. The mud returns. Snow melts into slime. Your boots sink with every step, and mosquitoes begin their reign of terror. You find yourself. You wake to the sound of boots scraping against metal. Is softly singing a Neapolitan lullaby, off-key, but oddly comforting. A sergeant tells you the journey will take a few days. If the sea behaves, he says. Of course, the sea doesn't. It tosses you around like a pebble in a tin can. Soldiers vomit into helmets, then rinse them out and carry on. You give up on standing and just lie flat on your back, staring at the ceiling beams and trying not to think about death by torpedo, because there's always that whisper, what if the British Navy finds us? And link up with Rommel's Africa Corps to deliver a Mediterranean knockout punch. Bold, ambitious, totally unprepared. You arrive in Tripoli under a baking sun that turns the air into soup. Not a single leaf, just beige, yellow, and the endless shimmer of heat. You expect palm trees and oasis towns, like in the postcards. What you get is endless horizon and the smell of fuel, sweat, and goats. You get assigned to a supply unit stationed near Benghazi. You won't be at the front right away, but support duty turns out to be a cruel joke. You're hauling crates in 45 degrees Celsius heat, fixing punctured tires, and digging latrines in ground so dry it breaks shovels. On your second day, you drink half your water ration before noon. Here's a grim little detail. Italy's army in North Africa often didn't have enough trucks, so they used mules. You haven't reached that point yet, but you've seen the empty harnesses. Your tent is a joke, more of a suggestion than a structure. One of them, nicknamed Il Chameleanthe, the chameleon, has survived since the Ethiopia campaign. His secret: stay under shade, say yes to officers, never eat British biscuits. No one knows what that last one means. You don't ask. You spend nights on guard duty, staring out into the black void of the desert. Sometimes you hear movement, sometimes it's wind, barrels before disappearing into the dark. Then one day you're told the front is moving. Rommel is advancing. You're needed. Bone-rattling journey to the front line. You cross terrain that doesn't seem real, fields of cracked stones, ghost villages, skeletons of rusted vehicles. You pass burned-out tanks, half buried in sand. They're younger than you expected, polite, clean. One of them speaks Italian and jokes that you'll learn to love the sand. You ask, how long have you been here? He shrugs, too long. Your destination is a ridge near El Agheila. The enemy is just over the horizon. You're assigned to watch for movement. Nothing happens for 3 days. You watch the same stretch of nothingness until it begins to shimmer and pulse in the heat. You start naming the dunes. One of them you call Claudia. She's got nice curves. The 4th day, everything changes. At dawn, you hear engine. The machine gunner next to you opens fire, his helmet askew, screaming something about his mother's soup. Then it stops. The quiet comes too fast. You emerge, blinking. One man's gunno, one saw where. Maybe buried, maybe just gone. Then the tanks come. Rommel's plan was brilliant until it wasn't. He pushed too far, too fast. Supply lines stretched thin. Struggle for control in North Africa. You don't care what they call it, you just run. You abandon the ridge with half your unit. You don't even have a map, just a general direction and a whispered prayer. One day you find a dead camel. Another day you find an abandoned Allied camp with a single can of British stew. He doesn't complain. No one does anymore. At one point, you're so thirsty, you consider licking the condensation off the inside of a fuel can. You don't, but only because someone else beats you to it. And here's the wild part. Despite all of it, you get used to the rhythm. Wake up, walk, dig, wait, run, sleep, repeat. War is terrible. You've stopped expecting quiet mornings. Every sunrise in Tobruk is loud, if not from shells, then from arguments, groaning engines, or some poor soul coughing up half a lung. Still, this morning feels ... off. The sun's up, but the camp is tense. Officers are huddled. Radio operators wear that grim look they get when messages come in too fast. You hear one of them mutter something about British armor massing near El Alamein. Just move. The trucks are already loaded, engines sputtering. You're jammed in with 20 others, rifles slung across your back, water ration sloshing in a dented canteen. No one talks much. A few chew on whatever passes for breakfast, dry crackers, mostly. One guy unwraps a square of chocolate like it's the last treasure on earth. The road is endless. Sand and sun, sun and sand. You try to nap, but every bump slams your skull into the side rail. Your only distraction is the buzz of the radio, mostly static, sometimes shouts. You pass another convoy heading the other way. Burned out trucks, blood-soaked stretchers. One man waves with a bandaged stump. You don't wave back. You arrive late in the afternoon at a supply depot near Mersa Matruh. It's a wasteland of scattered crates, tents, and half-assembled artillery. The lieutenant says you'll be supporting armored divisions. That's code for you'll be wherever they don't want to send real troops. You get put on lookout duty near the ridgeline. The first night, the stars are astonishing. You almost forget you're here to die. The Milky Way spills across the sky, pale and perfect. You lie on your back, rifle resting on your chest, listening to the creak of the desert and the soft hum of Finjans. Then something moves on the horizon. You blink, and the world catches fire. British shells rain down like judgment. The ridge shakes as shouts echo down the line. You grab your rifle and dive into a shallow trench, not yours, just the nearest hole. You land beside another soldier, his eyes wide. Neither of you says a word. You stay there all night, through every explosion. You taste the grit of the air. You count the seconds between blasts. And when the silence returns, it's not peaceful. It's haunted. The sun rises over a field of twisted metal. You've officially survived your first tank engagement. You're reassigned again, this time to a mechanized unit that's seen better days. Half the trucks don't start. The other half don't stop. One guy claims his brakes are just a suggestion. Your job is now to scout ahead. That's not as glamorous as it sounds. Mostly, you drive over dunes and pray you don't get blown up. Once, you find an old mine and gently reverse. No explosion. But the guy behind you swears he saw his life flash before his eyes. Quirky detail of the day. Italian engineers in North Africa sometimes disguised trucks as tanks using wooden frames and paint. From far away, it looked convincing. Up close, it was just embarrassing. You pass one during a mission that's missing a wheel, and the turret is held on with rope. You salute it anyway. In between missions, the real killer is thirst. Your unit goes for days without fresh water. You trade your last pack of cigarettes for a half bottle of something vaguely clear and extremely questionable. It tastes like regret and shoe polish, but it works. One night, your buddy Johnny digs a shallow hole just to keep cool. He lies in it like a grave. You leave North Africa like a ghost, not with fanfare, not with honor, no flags, no music, just a silent order passed down through weary officers. Half civilian, floating off the coast of Tunisia. It stinks of oil, salt, and fear. No one speaks. Some sleep sitting up. Others clutch their rifles like lifelines. The sea groans beneath you. The voyage lasts days, maybe a week. Time warps when you're seasick and scared. One guy jumps overboard. Halfway through, whether it was despair, madness, or just a tragic accident, no one knows. No one asks. You finally reach Sicily. Not home, but close. Sicily feels strange. You expect celebration or shame. Instead, you get bureaucracy. You're processed at a makeshift. Your name is checked off a list. A sergeant writes "fought in Africa" on your chart. He doesn't look you in the eye. They issue new uniforms, olive drab. You're told you'll be stationed in mainland Italy soon. The war, it seems, has moved. You spend 3 weeks in limbo camped near Palermo. You haul crates, dig latrines, and swat at mosquitoes. One day you help repair a supply truck whose engine smokes like a dying dragon. Another day, you guard a train full of fuel barrels, watching the countryside roll by in silence. Your boots finally fall apart. A clerk gives you new ones, 2 sizes too small. You take them anyway. You've learned not to argue. At night, the other men talks fondly, carefully. The rumors are always the same. The British are planning something. The Americans are on their way. Germany is sending more tanks. You stare at the stars again, but this time they feel different, duller, as if the sky itself has grown weary of watching. And then, one morning, it happens. Air raid sirens. You run. Barefoot boots, still drying by the fire. Explosions bloom across the harbor like metal flowers. Anti-aircraft guns rattle like furious typewriters. You dive behind a sandbag wall and pray. When it's over, the sun rises through black smoke. You hear a medic say, "That was a softening blow. They're coming." They arrive 2 days later. The Allies land at Gela, Licata, and further south. British troops in the east, Americans in the west. Swarm your face, eyes, mouth. Your machine gun nest is made of rocks and wishful thinking. You don't even have a helmet. Yours was taken by a German officer in Tunisia who claimed it fit better. The Americans move fast. They have tanks, trucks, air cover. Their uniforms look cleaner, like they've never even seen Africa or Spain or hunger. You fight anyway. Because what else is there? The first clash is a blur. You fire until your gun jams. Then you switch to your rifle. Then you throw rocks. Eventually, you run. Everyone runs. Back in the village, civilians watch silently as you retreat. Old men stare. Women hold children. No one cheers. No one cries. Just silence. Later that night, as you hide in an olive grove, a boy no older than 12 brings you bread, says nothing. Next week, Sicily is lost. Your orders come from a radio broadcast. All Axis forces are to retreat to mainland Italy. You're put on a fishing boat this time. No navy, no protection. Just a dozen exhausted men and a confused captain with one eye and a shotgun. You sail through the Strait of Messina. Under moonlight, no one talks. Mainland Italy is not what you imagined. You always thought it would feel like home. Instead, it feels like the end. The roads are clogged with retreating troops, half-destroyed vehicles, horses, and civilians. Then, up the coast, then, inland, you're told you'll make a stand near Salerno. You don't know what that means anymore. The Americans land on the beach and walk right through your defenses. The few men left in your unit are scattered across the hills, firing blindly. You spend 2 days pinned down in a stone farmhouse. The walls shake. A sniper picks off your commander from 200 meters. When the bullets stop, you emerge with your hands up, but no one's there. The Americans have moved on. You walk for hours. You've stopped wearing the uniform. It's folded into a bundle beneath your bedroll, tucked away with the rest of your past life dog tags, an enamel badge, a few loose buttons. You haven't thrown them out, not yet. Maybe that means something. For now, you live among stone and silence. The days are slow, the kind of slow that doesn't come from peace, but from exhaustion. You sleep in a hollowed-out monastery on a hillside north of Naples, surrounded by olive groves and tangled brambles. A cracked bell still hangs in the tower, its rope long rotted, its chime stilled by time and war. No one else lives here, not anymore. The monks are gonna there conscripted or scattered and the stained glass. Windows have been shattered by artillery so long ago that even the rain has learned to fall through them in silence. You make your shelter in what used to be the scriptorium. The floor is covered in dust and old candle stumps, and one of the walls still bears the faded trace of a painted saint, though the face has chipped away. The well still works. That's enough. But isolation is not immunity. The front moves again, and with it come rumors. The Allies have taken Anzio and are pushing north, inch by inch, through towns you once memorized from postcards. The Germans are retreating, slowly, violently. Civilians flow like spilled water across valleys and ridges some toward American lines, others toward mountain hideaways, many toward nothing in particular. And now there's no longer a clear front, no safe line, no red and blue pins on a map. Just scattered units, reprisals, betrayals, and the sense that anyone you meet might be armed, angry, or both. You begin to ration your footsteps. You stave off the roads. You hide when planes pass overhead. You learn to sleep with one ear open. And then, One morning, you find him. He's lying by the roadside, one leg twisted awkwardly under the other, blood seeping through a strip of towel tied tightly around his ribs. You hesitate. Then, against your better judgment, you drag him into the shade and do what you can. He doesn't speak, not even a groan, just clenches his teeth, while you clean the wound with wine and stitch the torn flesh together using thread from your spare shirt. His skin is hot, his hands are cold. It takes hours, and when it's done, you half expect him to die right there. Instead, he nods once and closes his eyes. When he wakes again, you've made a weak soup from chestnuts and dandelion leaves. He eats slowly. Later, while he sleeps again, you find a pistol under his coat, barely functional. You leave it there. Tucked beneath the lining of his jacket is a red cloth armband, the mark of a partisan. When he can walk, he leads you to them. The camp is not what you expected. There are no flags, no uniforms, no rousing speeches, just a dozen men and women in mismatched coats and scavenged boots, crouched around a radio the size of a suitcase. The leader is a former schoolteacher with soft eyes and hard hands. His code name is Marco. Everyone uses fake names now, even though you all know it probably won't help if you're caught. You introduce yourself with a name that isn't yours and a story that mostly is. They let you stay that night by the fire. Someone plays a harmonica so softly you mistake it for the wind. Your new life begins with small tasks: watch duty, message, carrying, fixing boots with strips of bicycle tire. You build a habit of silence. You learn which trees give shelter and which ones echo footsteps. You memorize the cracks in the rocks near the supply cache, just in case you need to hide something fast. At first, it's about survival. Then it becomes something else. Not quite hope, but resistance. You wake before dawn, curled on cold stone beneath a threadbare blanket, the chill biting through your clothes as the first faint light spills over the Apennine ridges. The air tastes sharp and clean, a cruel contrast to the dust and gunpowder you're used to inhaling. You sit up slowly, muscles stiff and protesting after months of running, hiding, fighting, and sometimes just surviving by sheer dumb luck. Stretching your arms, you listen carefully. The village is still asleep, but not quiet. Somewhere a dog barks, a rooster crows, and somewhere else a child coughs softly. You take it all in, the small sounds of life pressing against the silence of war. You're not sure when you last heard a dawn like this. You stand and move outside, boots crunching on gravel scattered with stray olive leaves. The village, more of a cluster of houses pressed tight against a hill, looks tired. Walls are cracked, plaster peeling in soggy strips. Wooden shutters hang crooked, doors patched with scraps of metal. Here and there, laundry flaps in the weak morning breeze, the colors dulled by sun and soot. There's a faint scent of wood smoke and something you can't place: damp earth, wild herbs, and the faintest hint of baking bread. It's almost enough to fool you into forgetting that just weeks ago this place was caught between artillery, fire, and fear. You wander towards the square, the heart of the village. The market is barely a market, wooden crates stacked empty, tables overturned, a few scattered apples left to rot in the sun. But already a handful of villagers gather, old men in threadbare coats, trading, whispered news. Women carrying clay pots, heavy with water. Children darting through legs with reckless laughter. You pause, watching a little girl chase a scruffy dog who's clearly not in the mood for games. The dog snaps playfully, and she squeals, running faster, cheeks flushed with excitement. You realize how strange it is to hear such joy in a place so soaked with sorrow. You find a cafe. Well, a room with a counter and a handful of stools where the owner wipes down his tables with a rag stiff with grime. The smell of bitter coffee draws you inside, and you take the first warm sip in what feels like forever. It's harsh and black, but you savor it anyway. Around you, people talk in hushed tones about the front lines, about partisan attacks and German patrols. You overhear snippets of conversation. Gothic line, American advance. More bombings near Bologna, and you nod along, pretending you don't know what it all means, even though it feels like the war is living in every word. Later, that day, word reaches you that a group of partisans is meeting in a cellar beneath the church. You follow the narrow cobblestone streets and slip through an unmarked door into darkness. The air is damp and smells of old stone and wood smoke. A dozen faces turn towards you, men and women with tired eyes and steady hands, wearing a patchwork of stolen uniforms, civilian clothes, and grim determination. The leader, a woman with sharp features and a voice that brooks no argument, lays out a plan. Sabotage a railway bridge crucial to German supply lines. The plan is detailed. Explosives timed to detonate as a supply train passes. Coordinated distractions and an escape route through the hills. The stakes are clear. You volunteer to scout the route, relying on your knowledge of the hills and your knack for moving silently through the brush. Your offer is met with nods of approval and quick smiles. You're needed. The night before, the mission stretches long and restless. You lie awake in the cramped cellar, the cold seeping through the cracks in the stone walls, your thoughts drifting like smoke. You remember the desert, the endless sand, the blistering sun, the stars so bright they burned your eyes. You remember the nights on the front lines, the flash of explosions, the bitter taste of fear. You remember the faces, some friendly, some lost forever, and you remember the silence after, thick and heavy. A soft chuckle escapes you when you recall how you once thought a mine disguised as a rock was clever, until your own foot almost set it off. War, you realize, is as much about dumb luck as strategy. The cold and the dark press against you, but beneath it all, a spark of purpose burns steady. This fight is yours, now chosen not by oath or uniform, but by necessity and heart, as the first pale fingers of dawn touch the hills. You slip from the cellar, moving like a shadow. The air is cool, scented with wild thyme and damp earth. You check your gear pistol with one magazine, small satchel with tools, a length of wire wrapped carefully in cloth. You move quietly, weaving through olive groves and rocky outcrops. Each step measured, ears alert for the crunch of leaves or the whistle of a distant train. The railway snakes through the valley below, an artery of metal and steam that fuels the enemy's war machine. You sketch the terrain in your mind, the curve of the tracks, the narrow bridge spanning a deep ravine, the steep path you'll use to escape. Hours pass in careful observation and silent preparation. Every moment your senses sharpen, muscles tense for flight or fight. When night falls, the village is quiet again, but your mind races. You hear the low rumble of engines, the chatter of soldiers, the faint glow of lanterns along the rail line. Your fingers tremble as you set the explosives, small charges placed just so, wired carefully to a slow fuse. You work quickly, methodically, heart pounding against ribs like a warning drum. You tread cautiously through the Apennine mountain paths, each footfall muffled by a thick carpet of pine needles and moss. The forest around you is alive with a quiet symphony. Birds trill from the canopy. A distant woodpecker taps a steady rhythm on a hollow trunk, and somewhere nearby, water trickles over smooth stones. It's the kind of peace that feels unnatural after months and months of gunfire, fear, and flight. But nature pays no heed to the human conflicts. Tearing its hills apart, it just keeps going. Stubborn and indifferent, like a clock that refuses to stop. You draw comfort from this permanence. When everything else feels fragile and fleeting, the forests stand patient, silent witnesses to all your fears and hopes. Your days dissolve into one another, marked only by the rising and setting sun, the lengthening shadows in the afternoon, and the ever-present danger that lurks unseen. Working alongside the partisans, you learn their language, not just their dialect, but their unspoken codes. How to read the enemy's patrol patterns, how to move silently through brush and stone, how to stash supplies beneath roots and rock, crevices so well that even you sometimes forget where they are. The partisans are a motley crew, farmers, teachers, students, shopkeepers, all transformed by war into guerrillas. The lines between friend and stranger blur as you share food, stories, and stolen moments of laughter around flickering campfires. Their faces carry the same weary determination you know too well, etched with sleepless nights and a dozen close calls. At night, the cold seeps through your threadbare clothes and into your bones. Frost sometimes coats the leaves, sparkling like tiny diamonds under the moonlight. You huddle with comrades, pressing close for warmth, sharing whispers about home places you might never see again, families you fear you've lost, futures uncertain as the stars overhead. Some tell stories to keep the darkness at bay. A joke about a clumsy German soldier who tripped over his own boots, or a humorous nickname given to an overly serious partisan commander. Your lips twitch with a smile now and then, a small rebellion against despair. One evening, a breathless courier stumbles into camp with news that electrifies the group. The Allies have finally broken through the German defenses at Monte Cassino. The name echoes like a beacon, a distant promise of liberation. You feel a flicker of hope, a sudden surge of energy in your veins. But hope is a tricky thing. Historians still argue whether Monte Cassino's brutal siege was worth the human cost. And here you are, caught between relief and grief for those who never made it out alive. You remind yourself to keep your guard up. The war is far from over. You help plan an ambush on a German supply convoy passing through a narrow mountain pass. The plan is simple but deadly. Disable the trucks, capture weapons, and disappear before reinforcements arrive. You scout the route carefully, noting every bend in the road, every potential hiding spot. The convoy's arrival sends your heart pounding. The rumble of engines and the smell of diesel grow sharper with each passing second. When the moment comes, you fire your pistol twice, the sharp cracks echoing through the trees like thunder. The trucks screech to a halt, soldiers scrambling in confusion. You vanish into the woods like a shadow, heart racing, but breath steady, your feet barely disturbing the dry leaves beneath you. Later, you rest in a humble farmhouse nearby. Villagers look at you with a mix of fear and gratitude, old eyes tracing your worn uniform, young ones clutching their mother's skirts. A child offers you a piece of stale bread, her wide eyes serious as she waits for your reaction. You smile gently, a rare warmth rising inside you. It's a fragile ember, but enough to carry you forward through the cold. Spring transforms the land, painting the hills with wildflowers and filling the air with the scent of fresh earth and melting snow. Rivers swell with the thaw, gurgling their way past moss-covered stones. Yet the war's shadow is never far. Whispers of betrayal circulate among the resistant spies, informers, fractured loyalties. Trust becomes a precious currency, doled out sparingly and guarded fiercely. You learn to read the slightest hesitation in a voice, the quick glance exchanged between allies, the nervous tapping of a boot. Every step is measured, every word weighed. Even amid this danger, moments of humanity shine through like stars in a dark sky. You find yourself helping an elderly woman tend her garden, her hands gnarled but sure as she hums an old lullaby. The melody lingers in your mind long after you leave, a bittersweet reminder that life endures, stubborn and beautiful. Even in the darkest times, news arrives that the Allies are advancing steadily northward. The German lines weaken their grip, slipping with each day. The resistance grows bolder, striking with increasing frequency and precision. You join a raid on a supply depot. The fight is fierce but quick. In the chaos, you catch sight of a young German soldier, no older than you, fighting with desperate determination. His eyes meet yours for a fleeting moment, and in that instant, the war dissolves into two human beings caught on opposite sides. You lower your weapon for just a heartbeat, but the moment passes, swallowed by the gunfire and shouting. Summer's warmth begins to creep across the hills, a harsh contrast to the lingering wounds of war. The taste of freedom feels closer, yet remains just out of reach. You keep moving, fighting, waiting for the guns to fall silent. Until then, you are a shadow in the woods, a whisper carried by the wind, a flicker of hope, burning, stubborn, and bright in a land ravaged by conflict. The morning air is heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine needles as you emerge from the underbrush, the first fragile light of dawn filtering through dense leaves. Your boots sink slightly into soft soil, muffling your steps as you trace the familiar contours of the Apennine foothills. Every breath tastes sharp and cool, a crispness that seems almost foreign after nights spent shivering in cold stone shelters and sleeping beneath ragged blankets. The forest hums softly around you. Birds warble tentative morning songs. A woodpecker taps rhythmically on a nearby tree trunk, and a squirrel scurries unseen, rustling leaves. You take in this natural symphony with a quiet appreciation. It's a fragile soundtrack, contrasting starkly with the harsh cacophony of gunfire and explosions you've grown used to. The forest here is old, scarred, but resilient, a mirror of your own battered resolve. You pause to glance at a worn leather map in your hands, the edges curled and stained, roots penciled in with care. The partisan network has grown over the months, from loose bands of determined locals into a coordinated resistance force. Today's mission is critical. Intercept a German convoy carrying weapons and ammunition to the front lines, a blow meant to slow their relentless push northward. Your role is scout and lookout, eyes sharp for movement and danger on the narrow mountain pass where the ambush will take place. The path is treacherous, steep slopes littered with loose rocks, thick underbrush clawing at your clothes, and the ever-present risk of enemy patrols. Each step demands focus. One wrong move could alert the convoy, or worse, lead to a fatal fall. You feel the weight of your pack settle heavily on your back, the familiar strain, a grounding presence amid swirling nerves. A sudden breeze stirs the pine needles overhead, carrying the faint scent of smoke from a distant village and the bitter tang of diesel fuel as you reach the vantage point. The convoy comes into view, winding along the narrow road below a stream of trucks and jeeps, their metal bodies gleaming dully in the early light. The drivers and guards are tense, eyes scanning the hills, radios crackling faint commands. You note the length of the column, longer than anticipated, a detail you quickly pass along to your comrades through a series of hand signals. The leader, a stoic man with sharp eyes, acknowledges and gestures silently, coordinating the strike with practiced precision. Your heart hammers as the first shot rings out, sharp and startling in the stillness. Explosions follow in rapid succession. Dirt and gravel spray skyward, mingling with acrid smoke. Soldiers shout orders, scramble for cover behind the trucks and jagged rocks. You fire your pistol, every shot controlled despite the adrenaline. The recoil, familiar and strangely reassuring. A fuel truck erupts in flames, the fire leaping hungrily toward nearby crates stacked with ammunition. The convoy grinds to a chaotic halt, tires spinning uselessly as soldiers flee the wreckage. After the dust settles, you disappear into the forest, feet barely disturbing the leaf litter as you follow the narrow escape route mapped out earlier. The cool shade cloaks you muffling sound, and you move like a ghost, heart still pounding from the clash. A sudden rustle makes you freeze. It's only a fox, darting between ferns with curious eyes. You exhale slowly, the tension easing a fraction. Then you spot a patch of wild raspberries, gleaming like tiny rubies among the green. You pause, plucking a handful to savor their tart sweetness's fleeting taste of normalcy in a world gone mad. A small smile touches your lips, a quiet rebellion against the bleakness. Night falls as you reach a safe house nestled in a secluded valley, a modest stone cottage framed by gnarled olive trees. The air inside is warm with the scent of simmering stew and burning wood. Faces glow softly in firelight, smiles flicker despite exhaustion and loss. You share a simple meal-stale bread dipped in olive oil, thick soup, heavy with herbs and listen as the villagers trade news, their voices low but alive with hope. The room buzzes with stories of past raids, narrow escapes, and the longing for peace. Laughter bubbles up now and then, fragile but fierce. Yet beneath the warmth is the ever-present shadow of reprisal. You know the Germans strike back swiftly and cruelly after every attack. Villages burned, families torn apart, innocent lives caught in the crossfire. The memory of a burned church you passed yesterday, a charred skeleton against a pale sky, sits heavy in your mind. The balance between victory and tragedy is razor-thin. Later, as the fire dies to embers, you sit outside beneath a sky sparkling with stars. The Milky Way, a luminous river overhead. The forest is alive with nocturnal sounds. The chirp of crickets, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. You pull your coat tighter and let your thoughts wander, reflecting on the strange duality of this existence. One moment you are a soldier, fierce and alert, caught in a deadly game of cat and mouse. The next you are simply human, craving warmth, safety, and the comfort of shared stories. You think about the families torn apart, the ruins of once thriving villages, and the countless lives fractured by war's cruelty. But you also think about resilience, the stubborn human spirit that refuses to break, even when the world around it crumbles. The fierce determination in a child's eyes, the kindness of strangers who share their last scraps, the quiet courage of comrades who stand beside you even when fear claws at their throats. These are the threads that hold you together, weaving a fragile tapestry of hope in a landscape of despair as you drift to sleep beneath a canvas of stars. The soft hum of the forest lulls you toward rest. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new dangers, and new battles. But for now, you allow yourself this rare moment of peace, a brief pause in the relentless storm of war. The path ahead remains uncertain, but your feet are steady, your resolve unbroken, and in this moment, that is enough. You wake before dawn, the air cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth that clings to this mountainous region like a second skin. The sky is a deep indigo, scattered with stars, blinking quietly, indifferent to the turmoil. Unfolding beneath them, you pull your worn coat tighter around your shoulders, feeling the rough fabric press against your skin, a comforting reminder that you're still here, still moving, still breathing, despite everything. Somewhere, a rooster lets out a loud, raucous crow that breaks the silence with a comic defiance. You suppress a chuckle, the absurdity of such normalcy amid chaos, somehow grounding. Today's mission is unlike many you've undertaken. There's no firefight planned, no sabotage to execute. Instead, you are charged with escorting a group of villagers, mostly children and the elderly, to a safer refuge, away from the encroaching violence that's been edging closer week by week. The journey is perilous, threading through narrow mountain paths, steep ridges, and shadowed forests, where the risk of enemy patrols and natural hazards looms large. Still, you know better than anyone that waiting in place is often the deadliest choice. The children cluster around you nervously, clutching the few belongings they could gather in the frantic hours before departure. Their eyes are wide, shimmering, with a cocktail of fear, confusion, and faint flickers of curiosity. You bend down and meet their gaze, offering a gentle smile that you hope feels genuine. One boy, no older than 8, shyly presses a small wooden carving into your palm, rough-hewn figure of a soldier. His face is serious, almost solemn, as he explains, "This will keep you safe." You nod solemnly, the weight of the gesture settling like a stone in your chest. It's a small thing, but in a world upended by violence, it feels monumental as you lead the group along winding trails. The landscape unfolds in breathtaking contrast to the grim realities you all face. Sunlight spills through the dense canopy in golden shafts, illuminating patches of moss and wildflowers, delicate bluebells, fiery poppies, and sweet-smelling lavender that perfumes the air. The scent is so vivid, so achingly pure, it momentarily transports you away from war's relentless grip. You inhale deeply, savoring the unexpected balm. Around you, birds flit between branches, their songs light and carefree, oblivious to the suffering below. The scene feels almost surreal, a stolen moment of peace in a shattered world. Your senses remain alert, however. Every rustle of leaves, every distant crack of a twig sets your heart racing. You catch yourself flinching at shadows, scanning treetops for the glint of helmets or the telltale flicker of a flashlight. Paranoia, you remind yourself, is the price of survival here. You guide the group carefully, your voice low and steady as you offer quiet reassurance. The children cling to your words and to each other, their small hands tightly gripping worn backpacks and scarves. Midway through your journey, you encounter a contingent of fellow partisans sent ahead to scout. Their faces are grim, eyes sharp and wary, reflecting the harshness of this endless conflict. They bring news of shifting front lines and increased enemy patrols. The mood shifts, palpably hope, tempered by the cold steel of reality. Maps are unfurled on a makeshift table, fingers tracing routes and safe houses. Information is exchanged quickly, efficiently. The children watch silently, sensing the gravity, even if the full meaning eludes them. You catch their eyes and offer soft smiles, trying to shield them from the weight of war. The path grows steeper, narrower, hugging cliff faces with dizzying drops just a few feet away. At one precarious ledge, a frightened girl grips your arm tightly, her small body trembling. You crouch beside her, whispering soothing words, your own voice steadier than you feel inside. Step by step, you guide her across, careful not to startle. The group behind you, the wind gusts suddenly, rustling leaves and carrying the faint scent of smoke, an unwelcome reminder that danger is never far. You press forward, every muscle tense but resolute, as the sun dips low, casting long shadows. Across the rugged terrain, you finally reach the sanctuary, a hidden valley cradled between towering cliffs. It's a place of fragile beauty. Clear streams gurgle over smooth stones. Wildflowers bloom in vibrant clusters, and the soft hum of insects fills the warm air. The villagers' faces light up with awe and relief. Children's laughter rings out, pure and unburdened, for the first time in what feels like ages. You watch as they explore cautiously, touching moss-covered rocks and dipping toes in the cool water. This valley is a haven, a breath of life in a land scarred by destruction. That night, gathered around a campfire, you share a modest meal of hard bread and steaming stew. The flames dance, casting flickering shadows that mingle with the quiet murmur of voices. Stories are exchanged of loved ones lost, of narrow escapes, of dreams for a world beyond war. Laughter surfaces now and then, fragile yet fierce, lighting the darkness like the fire itself. You find yourself drawn into conversations, your own voice steady despite the exhaustion and grief that linger just beneath the surface. Yet even in this moment of respite, the specter of reprisal haunts your thoughts. You remember the burned church, its charred skeleton silhouetted against the gray sky, the anguished faces of villagers you passed days ago. The cost of resistance is steep, measured in shattered homes and broken families. The balance between hope and despair is precarious, a tightrope walked daily by all who dare to fight. Later, alone beneath the vast canopy of stars, you cradle the small wooden soldier close. The night air is alive with nocturnal sounds, the steady chirp of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, the whisper of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. You reflect on the strange duality of your existence, part warrior, part guardian, part witness to unimaginable suffering and unexpected grace. You think of the resilience etched into the faces of those you protect, the quiet acts of kindness that defy the brutality surrounding you as sleep finally claims you. The forest hums, a lullaby, a fragile promise that life endures. Tomorrow will bring new dangers, new challenges, and new moments of courage. But for now, cradled in this pocket of peace, you allow yourself the luxury of rest, the soft glow of hope steadying your heart against the storm to come. You awaken slowly to the gentle symphony of dawn, the soft rustle of pine needles stirred by a cool breeze, distant birdsong weaving through the crisp mountain air, and the faint, steady murmur of the stream threading its way through the valley. Below, the sky is a pale wash of gray and pink, the first hints of sunlight spilling over the jagged peaks like spilled paint on a canvas. The scent of damp earth mingles with smoke from nearby fires, curling lazily toward the heavens in thin spirals. You stretch your aching limbs beneath a tattered wool blanket, the fabric scratchy against your skin but comforting all the same. Around you, the camp begins to stir, muffled footsteps, quiet whispers, the soft clink of utensils as your fellow partisans prepare for the day. The fragile calm of this morning feels almost sacred, a brief reprieve from the endless tension of war. Your throat feels dry, the stale taste of yesterday's ration lingering as you gulp cold water from a battered tin cup. You glance at the small wooden soldier tucked safely in your pocket, its rough-hewn form a talisman against despair. Outside, the forest hums with life. Squirrels dart among the branches. Dew clings to spiderwebs glistening like strings of pearls. And somewhere a distant woodpecker taps a steady beat on an ancient oak. It's a reminder that the world beyond conflict continues, indifferent to human suffering, but also beautifully persistent. You take a slow, deep breath, steadying your nerves for the day ahead. Today's mission carries a different weight. You're tasked with escorting a group of refugees, a motley collection of women, children, and elders through the twisting, treacherous mountain trails to a larger resistance stronghold. Their faces are etched with exhaustion, eyes shadowed by fear and uncertainty. Yet beneath the fatigue flickers a stubborn hope. They clutch their meager possessions tightly, some cradling tattered blankets, others clutching small bundles of food or cherished keepsakes. The children are quiet, their usual chatter subdued by the gravity of the journey. You kneel to meet their gaze, offering a gentle smile and soft words of reassurance. "We'll get through this," you tell them, voice low and steady, though your own heart pounds with the weight of responsibility. The path ahead is unforgiving. Narrow footpaths cling precariously to cliff edges. Loose stones threaten to betray your footing, and thick underbrush scrapes at your clothing as you weave through dense forest. Each step is taken with careful deliberation. One misstep could mean a fall down a dizzying precipice or a loud noise that betrays your presence. Your senses are on high alert. Every twig snap, every bird call, every distant footfall is catalogued and analyzed. You keep your weapon close but hidden, a silent promise of protection. The children cling to your hands or to the arms of their mothers, their small bodies trembling as the wind cuts through the trees. You pause, often adjusting scarves, sharing sips of water, whispering quiet encouragements. At one point, a little girl with tangled hair and bright, curious eyes presses a wildflower into your palm. "For luck," she says shyly. You accept it gratefully, the simple act feeling like a fragile thread of normalcy woven into this tapestry of fear and uncertainty. You tuck the flower carefully inside your jacket, next to the wooden soldier private shrine of hope. Hours pass with slow, deliberate steps, the forest growing darker as clouds gather overhead. Without warning, a sudden downpour crashes through the canopy, transforming the trail into a slippery, muddy mess. You scramble to usher the group beneath a cluster of broad-leafed oaks, their branches heavy with rain. The sound of raindrops hammering the leaves is both soothing and relentless, drowning out distant thunder and muffling the sounds of the forest. You huddle close to the children, sharing what little dry cloth you have to wrap around shivering shoulders. Whispered stories emerge, a tale of a clever fox who outwits hunters, a song about stars that guide lost travelers. The warmth of shared stories and bodies pressed close fights back the cold and fear. When the rain finally eases, a golden light filters through the dripping leaves, scattering rainbows across moss-covered stones. The forest seems washed anew, the air fragrant with wet pine and fresh earth. You help the group resume their journey, the trails slick but passable, until at last the shelter of the resistance base emerges, a cluster of stone buildings nestled in a sun-dappled valley. Relief floods faces previously lined with worry. Children's laughter bubbles forth tentatively, echoing off ancient cliffs. That evening, the campfire crackles warmly as you gather with the fighters and refugees alike. The flames cast dancing shadows on faces marked by hardship, but alight with determination. You share a sparse meal-hard bread softened with olive oil. Thick vegetable stew stories swirl around the firelight. Tales of narrow escapes, acts of bravery, and the unyielding bonds forged in the crucible of war. A young partisan's dry wit surfaces with a joke about the absurdity of military discipline, eliciting genuine laughter that feels like a small miracle. Yet even in this haven, the specter of war lingers. You remember the scorched ruins of a village you passed days ago, the hollowed-out church standing like a tombstone against a gray sky. The cost of resistance is etched into every stone and every scar. The balance between hope and despair remains delicate, a thread you clutch tightly each day. Later, beneath a canopy of stars, brighter than you've seen in months, you hold the small wooden soldier close. The forest hums, a lullaby, the gentle chirping of crickets, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl. In this moment, the brutal world of gunfire and fear falls away, replaced by a fragile peace. You close your eyes, letting the warmth of hope settle over you like a soft blanket, knowing that tomorrow will bring new dangers, but also the strength to face them. You awake, slowly, as the first pale light of dawn filters through a tangled lattice of olive branches pressed against the small window of the stone refuge. The cool mountain air slips in like a whisper, carrying the mingled scents of pine needles, damp earth, wild herbs crushed underfoot, and the faint sweetness of blooming wildflowers clinging stubbornly to the rocky slopes. Somewhere nearby, an insistent rooster crows a brash, persistent sound that echoes across the valley. Its sharp call, reminiscent of an old war drum, summoning you from restless sleep to face another day's uncertain challenges. You stretch, languidly, muscles stiff from the thin mattress and uneven ground, feeling the dull ache settle like a stubborn shadow. Rest is precious and fleeting in these days, and even this short reprieve feels like a hard-earned gift. Around you, the refuge slowly stirs as your fellow partisans and villagers rouse from their fitful sleep. Whispered voices, the soft rustling of cloth, and the occasional clink of metal signal preparations underway. The stone walls hold the chill from night, but radiate a quiet, warmth-dampened flames from a dying hearth, and the weight of shared lives interwoven in this fragile sanctuary. You listen, half awake, to the soft murmurs of conversation, plans being whispered, hopes being guarded, fears kept at bay behind stoic faces. Today's mission feels different from the others. Less immediate violence, but no less vital intelligence gathering. Word has come that German patrols are probing closer to the valley's edge, threatening the resistance's tenuous hold on this mountainous stronghold. You are to join a small squad tasked with reconnoitering enemy movements, mapping their routes, and assessing their numbers. This knowledge, so often overlooked in grand historical accounts, can mean the difference between survival and annihilation. For your comrades, every detail, footprints in the mud, the rustle of leaves, discarded gear must be noted and remembered. You dress carefully, pulling on worn boots, stiffened with mud, fastening your belt with a practiced hand, checking the weight of your pistol and ammunition. Every item packed is pared down to essential, silent, efficient, with no room for error. The rough fabric of your jacket rubs comfortingly against your skin, a reminder of countless marches, narrow escapes, and quiet moments of camaraderie. You tuck the small wooden soldier into your breast pocket, its edges smoothed by your touch, a talisman to steady your nerves. Stepping out, you are immediately swallowed by the forest's embrace. Towering oaks, ancient pines, and twisted chestnuts create a living cathedral around you. The air is thick with the scent of resin, earth, and moss, alive with the gentle chorus of nature awakening, birds chirping tentative melodies, squirrels chattering as they dart between branches, insects buzzing softly in the undergrowth. The ground beneath your boots is soft with a carpet of pine needles and leaves, muffling your footsteps as you move with careful stealth. Every sense sharpens the flicker of movement in the shadows, the faintest scent of smoke, the sudden crack of a twig, each a signal, a warning, a heartbeat in the wild. You pause frequently to scan the landscape. Rugged cliffs rise sharply, framing narrow trails that snake precariously along the mountainside. The sun, now climbing higher, filters through the canopy in dappled patches, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow that seem to breathe with the forest's rhythm. You think of historians debating the strategic significance of these passes, whether controlling this rugged terrain truly influenced the larger war effort. To you, the answer is clear. Every inch fought here carries weight measured in lives, in quiet acts of defiance against overwhelming odds. Signs of recent enemy activity become apparent. Broken branches, fresh footprints in the mud, discarded shells glinting faintly in the underbrush. The scent of diesel lingers faintly on the breeze. Your heart quickens not with fear, but with the adrenaline of purpose. You and your comrades signal silently, pressing forward with practiced caution, voices held hostage by the forest's hush. You are a shadow among shadows, a breath on the wind, moving unseen but keenly felt. Suddenly, a rustle from above draws your gaze. A squad of German soldiers appears briefly on a distant ridge, their uniforms blending almost seamlessly with the rocky terrain and foliage. They move with mechanical precision, weapons slung and eyes scanning the valley below. You freeze, heart pounding like a drumbeat in your ears, muscles coiled tight. Your leader gestures for silence and stillness, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. You watch their patrol weave a slow, deliberate path, unaware of your presence but always threatening as they disappear into the trees. You exhale slowly, letting the tension ebb just enough to steady your nerves. The forest exhales with soft rustling leaves, distant bird calls, and gentle flow of the nearby stream weaving a fragile lullaby of peace. You press on, documenting every detail you can glean, knowing that each piece of intelligence will be carefully weighed by commanders and may tip the balance in the coming struggles. The hours pass in a measured cadence, silent steps, whispered communications, the ceaseless observation of a world both beautiful and brutal. You catch yourself reflecting on the paradox of this war, how life stubbornly clings to the edges of destruction, how laughter and song persist even in the shadow of death. You think of the debates among scholars about whether resistance in these mountains was a strategic game changer or merely a tragic footnote. To those who live it, every small victory is a beacon, every loss a scar. Returning to the refuge as dusk softens the sky, you are greeted by the warm glow of oil lamps and the comforting murmur of voices. Maps are spread across rough wooden tables. Fingers trace routes, mark enemy positions, and plot the next moves with grim determination. The room is thick with a mixture of exhaustion, resolve, and a faint glimmer of hope. Conversations ebb and flow, plans mingled with stories, laughter laced with sorrow. A young fighter recounts a narrow escape with dry wit, eliciting genuine laughter that feels like a balm to the weary spirit. Later, as night envelops the valley, you lie beneath a patchwork of blankets, the sounds of the forest weaving a gentle lullaby. The small wooden soldier rests in your hand, its smooth edges a silent companion in the dark. You think of the countless unnamed heroes whose sacrifices made this moment possible and whisper a quiet prayer for courage, for strength, and for the fragile hope that tomorrow might bring a step closer to peace. You wake to the soft, rosy light of dawn creeping through the rough wooden shutters of the mountain refuge. The air is crisp, carrying a complex bouquet of scents, the earthy musk of wet stone and pine needles, the faint smoke from distant fires, and the delicate sweetness of wildflowers stubbornly clinging to crevices in the rocky slopes. Around you, the refuge stirs with quiet activity, the low murmur of voices, the scrape of boots on stone floors, and the occasional clink of metal as makeshift kitchens prepare for the day. You stretch carefully, your muscles stiff from the rocky cat, and pull your coat tighter against the lingering chill. Today, your mission is vital yet perilous, delivering urgent messages to scattered resistance, cells hidden deep within the labyrinthine mountains. These dispatches, carefully encoded, brief but crucial, are the fragile lifeblood connecting the disparate fighters who cling to hope in the shadow of occupation. Without the flow of information, their courage risks drowning in isolation. You step outside just as the sun peeks over jagged peaks, painting the sky in soft hues of gold and rose. The world seems momentarily peaceful, bathed in warm light that catches on dewladen spiderwebs and sparkling leaves. But you know better. The quiet is the eye of a storm. The terrain ahead is a formidable gauntlet, narrow, uneven paths winding steeply through dense forests, sheer cliffs that drop into shadowed ravines, and icy streams that must be forded with care. Every step demands full attention. The forest speaks in subtle tongues, the crack of a twig, the snap of dry leaves, the distant call of a hawkend. You listen closely. The faintest sound could signal friend or foe. As you move deeper into the wild, you pass through several small hamlet-style clusters of stone cottages clinging precariously to the mountainside. The inhabitants greet you with a mix of caution and warmth. Children peer shyly from behind curtains, their eyes wide and curious, while elders offer solemn nods, their faces carved by years of hardship. In one village, an elderly woman presses a small bundle of wild herbs into your hand, a gift meant to soothe wounds and guard against illness. You accept it with gratitude, the touch of human kindness, a rare and precious balm amid the relentless grind of conflict. The path twists and narrows, funneling you through thick groves of chestnut and oak. You tread carefully, mindful of signs left by enemy patrols, broken branches, fresh footprints pressed into soft soil, discarded shell casings glinting faintly in the dappled light. The scent of burnt wood lingers in the air, a ghost of recent skirmishes. Your heart quickens with a mix of anxiety and resolve. Historians argue over the effectiveness of guerrilla tactics in Italy's mountainous regions. Some praise them as strategic masterstrokes that tied down enemy forces, while others view them as desperate, costly gambits that drained precious lives. You know the truth lies somewhere in between. Every small victory bought time. Every loss carved deep scars. Midway through your journey, a sudden storm bursts overhead, turning the forest into a torrent of rain and wind. You seek refuge beneath a rocky overhang, the cold water soaking through your clothes in moments. Thunder rumbles like distant artillery, and lightning flashes illuminate the jagged cliffs in stark, ephemeral brilliance. Despite the discomfort, the storm feels like a wild cleansing, nature's fierce breath washing over the scarred earth, momentarily drowning out the violence of war. You huddle close to your satchel, sheltering your precious messages, and wrapping trembling hands around a steaming tin cup filled with bitter, lukewarm tea. You whisper quiet stories to yourself and the children you've taken under your wing. Tales of cunning foxes and brave shepherds, of stars that guide the lost traveler home. The warmth of shared stories and bodies pressed close fights back, the cold and fear. When the tempest finally relents, the forest gleams, a Nutha air, thick with the scent of wet pine and fresh earth, droplets clinging like jewels to leaves and branches. Sunlight filters through the clearing mist, casting shimmering rainbows over the rugged landscape. The renewed light feels like a promise, a soft breath of hope in a world bruised by conflict. You press forward with steady heart and sharpened mind, knowing that the messages you carry stitch together a fragile network of resistance intelligence. Orders, pleas for aid, all vital threads woven through the tapestry of rebellion. As dusk settles, painting the sky in deepening shades of violet and amber, you arrive at your destination, a remote mountain outpost buzzing quietly with activity. Fighters move with purpose, preparing for the next day's missions with careful efficiency. The air hums with low conversations, the clatter of cooking pots, and the occasional burst of laughter, precious sound that feels almost rebellious in its joy. You deliver your messages swiftly, the weight of responsibility easing as they are accepted and read. Plans are made, routes mapped, futures imagined amid the uncertainty. The connections you facilitate here are more than just ink on paper. They are lifelines, symbols of hope and defiance. That night, beneath a sky ablaze with stars, you sit alone for a moment by the dying embers of a campfire. The crisp mountain air cools your flushed skin, and the faint scent of wood smoke mingles with the perfume of night-blooming flowers. You cradle the wooden soldier in your hand, its worn edges smooth and familiar, a small talisman against the vastness of chaos. The forest around you hums softly, a lullaby of endurance and life that persists despite the relentless storm of war. Tomorrow will bring new dangers, new hardships, and new tests of courage. But for now, you breathe in the night's gentle embrace and allow yourself a fragile moment of peace, held in the endless, fragile rhythm of resistance and hope. The morning unfolds gradually beneath a delicate mist that clings to the mountains like a silken veil, softening the jagged outlines of the rugged landscape. You awaken to the cool, damp air pressing gently against your skin through the frayed canvas of your tent. The scent of pine needles crushed underfoot, mingled with the earthy aroma of wet stone and moss, fills your lungs with each measured breath. Somewhere in the distance, a solitary bird's call pierces the quiet, sharp, clear, and insistent, breaking the silence like a subtle alarm. The world feels hushed but alive, as if holding its breath before the inevitable surge of the day. You swing your legs over the edge of your cot, feeling the familiar ache of stiff muscles protesting against the cold and uneven rest. The rough wool blanket falls away, revealing the worn fabric of your uniform that has weathered countless marches, skirmishes, and restless nights. You rise slowly, savoring the brief moment of stillness before the day's demands pull you forward. Outside, muted voices begin to stir the camp to life, the scrape of boots on stone floors, whispered exchanges, the clink of tin cups and ration tins being prepared. The scent of strong coffee and smoky firewood wafts in through the flap of your tent, promising a small comfort before you set out. Today's mission weighs heavily on your mind, escorting a supply convoy laden with precious food, medicine, and ammunition through the treacherous mountain roads. This lifeline to the front lines is as vital as it is vulnerable. Every crate delivered sustains hope and resistance. Every bullet could be the difference between survival and defeat. Your pack, ensuring essentials are secure but lightweight. The familiar weight of your rifle at your side is both a burden and a shield, a constant reminder of the precarious balance between life and death. Stepping outside, the world is painted in muted dawn, tones faded greens and browns softened by the lingering mist, the craggy peaks of the mountains partially veiled by low-hanging clouds. The air tastes clean but holds the faint sharpness of impending danger. The camp is alive with quiet energy as fighters move with purpose, readying vehicles, packing supplies, and exchanging brief nods and smiles that belie the anxiety beneath. You recognize faces, the young sharpshooter whose calm gaze has saved many, the veteran with countless scars and stories etched into his weathered skin, the quiet boy whose eyes reflect the heavy weight of lost innocence. The convoy begins to stir, engines sputtering to life and casting plumes of exhaust into the cool air. Trucks and jeeps line up, their worn tires crunching on gravel and dirt. The mountain road ahead is narrow and winding, carved into the steep slopes with sheer drops that plunge into shadowed ravines. Dust swirls behind the convoy, mingling with the pine-scented breeze that rustles the canopy overhead. Every twist and turn demands your full attention. The road offers no margin for error. Your eyes scan the tree line and rocky ledges constantly, searching for any sign of threat. The tension is palpable, a shared burden that binds the convoy in silent vigilance. Amid the tense quiet, you catch small moments that offer fragile solaces. Solitary wildflower pushing through cracked asphalt, a hawk soaring high above in effortless grace, the distant, haunting melody of a shepherd's whistle echoing through the valley. These reminders of life's persistence carve small sanctuaries of peace in your heart, counterpoints to the ever-present shadow of war. Suddenly, a sharp shout breaks the silence, a scout's urgent warning that enemy forces have been spotted ahead. The convoy halts immediately, engines silencing as fighters assume defensive positions. Your pulse quickens, but your breath remains steady, muscles tensing like coiled springs. Time seems to stretch as you watch a German patrol move cautiously along a parallel ridge, unaware of your presence, but close enough to feel their cold, calculated threat. When they pass without incident, relief floods you, tempered by the bitter realization of how close danger truly is. The convoy presses forward through a shifting tapestry of landscapes, narrow passes where the rock walls loom overhead, clear streams demanding cautious fording, dense forests, quiet conversations ripple through the group, shared stories, whispered jokes to ease tension, hopes spoken softly into the dusk. The camaraderie forged in these moments is a lifeline, a beacon against despair. You recall the heated debates among historians regarding the impact of guerrilla supply lines, whether these vulnerable convoys shaped the war's outcome or prolonged a painful stalemate. Your own experience tells a more nuanced truth. Each journey carries immeasurable risk and reward, a testament to courage threaded through with peril by evening. You arrive at the destination, a concealed cache nestled deep within a secluded valley shielded by towering cliffs and ancient forests. Fighters unload supplies with practiced urgency, the air alive with a quiet sense of victory. You watch the faces of those receiving aid, grateful, weathered, yet unbroken in spirit, a testament to resilience. Plans are quickly drawn under the flickering light of lanterns and campfires, routes mapped and futures imagined amidst the uncertainty. That night, beneath a vault of stars glittering like scattered diamonds, you lie awake, wrapped in threadbare blankets, the crisp mountain air mingling with the faint scent of wood smoke. The distant howl of wolves weaves through the silence, a wild lullaby to restless thoughts. In your hand, the wooden soldier rests, its worn edges smooth and familiar, talisman against the vast unknown. You breathe deeply, letting the forest's gentle sounds cradle you. Tomorrow promises fresh trials and new dangers, but tonight, in this fragile pause, hope burns steady, a quiet flame against the encroaching night. You awaken before the first blush of dawn stains the sky, a deep chill settling into your bones as you slip from the rough cot and step quietly from the refuge. The air is sharp and clean, carrying the scent of pine resin and cold stone, mingled with a faint trace of smoke from distant fires. The world around you is cloaked in shadow, the dense forest stretching endlessly into darkness, broken only by the occasional gleam of stars through gaps in the canopy. Somewhere, a lone owl calls softly, its hoot a haunting lullaby for the restless night. The faint murmur of a nearby stream threads through the valley below, steady and reassuring. You pause to breathe deeply, savoring the stillness before the day's burdens pull you forward. Today, your role shifts subtly but significantly. No longer a courier threading messages through hidden trails, you are now protector and scout, accompanying a small, tight-knit team on a reconnaissance mission. The goal, to map enemy fortifications, track supply routes, and gather vital intelligence that could tip the balance in the ongoing struggle. The stakes could not be clearer. Knowledge, after all, is power, and in this brutal conflict, it often means the difference between life and death, between fleeting hope and crushing defeat. The path ahead is unforgiving, narrow and winding. It snakes through dense woods where the canopy filters the early light into a muted green twilight. The underbrush claws at your clothes and boots, and the uneven ground demands every ounce of your concentration. You move deliberately, senses finely tuned to every detail. The soft crunch of twigs and dry leaves beneath boots, the subtle shift of shadows among the trees, the faint metallic temps that sometimes rides the cold breeze, hints of hidden enemy presence. The forest here is a living, breathing entity, its rhythms intertwined with the rhythms of war and survival. As you trudge deeper into the wilderness, your group encounters signs of recent enemy activity. A hastily abandoned campfire still smoldering, with cold ash, footprints pressed deeply into the moist earth, fragments of ration tins scattered beneath a fallen chestnut tree. Each trace tells a story, whispers of movement, haste, fatigue, and the constant pressure of conflict. You study these clues carefully, piecing together patterns of patrols, supply runs, and possible ambush points. Every detail could be a vital key unlocking the enemy's next move. Historians often debate the effectiveness of such reconnaissance missions in the mountainous regions of Italy. Some argue that these daring forays provided invaluable intelligence that allowed resistance groups and allied forces to coordinate strikes with deadly precision. Others suggest that the high risks and frequent losses diminished their overall strategic value. You know better. Here, on the ground, every scrap of information gathered can mean the difference between a successful ambush and walking into a deadly trap suddenly. The tense stillness shatters. A distant volley of gunfire echoes sharply through the trees. Staccato burst that sets your heart racing. The group freezes, muscles taut, weapons raised and ready. Your breath slows, steadying itself as the seconds stretch out, thick with tension and uncertainty. The shots fade, replaced by a heavy silence that seems to press against your skin. No one moves. The forest holds its breath with you. Then, a signal from your leader, a quick, subtle gesture breaks the paralysis. You move forward cautiously, every step measured and silent. The skirmish was close, but fleeting, a reminder that the war pulses relentlessly, even in the quietest corners of this rugged land. The group skirts the edges of known patrol routes, weaving through hidden trails and rocky outcrops, careful not to disturb the fragile balance. You document everything meticulously. Fortified enemy positions perched high on rocky ridges, supply caches cleverly concealed beneath thick underbrush, the ebb and flow of troop movements along narrow mountain paths. Each observation is a silent thread woven into a larger tapestry of conflict, pieced together in whispered reports and coded messages. The weight of this knowledge settles heavily on your shoulders, silent, unseen, but vital. As daylight wanes, you reach a hidden clearing deep within the forest. Here, the team pauses to share observations and forge plans under a sky dusted with stars like scattered diamonds. The night air is cool and fragrant with pine and damp earth. Noises of nocturnal life, rustling leaves, distant animal calls fill the silence, grounding you in the natural world even as war rages nearby. You sit close to the flickering light of a small fire, the warmth comforting against the chill. The wooden soldier in your pocket feels heavier tonight, its smooth edges worn by years of quiet touch. It is more than a keepsake. It is a symbol of enduring humanity amid chaos, a tether to memories and dreams that refuse to be extinguished. You let your thoughts drift gently, reflecting on the fragile balance of hope and fear that defines each day. The intelligence you carry may guide the next strike, save a life, or secure a fleeting moment of peace. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new dangers and decisions, carved from uncertainty, but tonight, wrapped in the quiet embrace of the forest, you find a moment of stillness, a pause in the endless rhythm of war and resistance. You awaken slowly, the faintest hint of dawn seeping through the threadbare canvas walls of the mountain cabin. Somewhere beyond the thin walls, the low murmur of stirring voices drifts through the trees, punctuated occasionally by the soft clinking of tin cups and the faint hiss of water heating over a small flame. Outside, the world is cloaked in a misty veil that softens the jagged silhouettes of the towering peaks. You pull your threadbare coat tighter around your shoulders, shivering slightly as the chill slips beneath your uniform. Today carries a new weight. You must coordinate a covert meeting between local resistance leaders and an allied liaison, a delicate affair fraught with peril and consequence. Success means strengthened bonds and coordinated efforts that could sway the tide of conflict. Failure could unravel months of painstaking work, casting the fragile resistance into chaos. Stepping outside into the damp morning air, you are greeted by the crisp scent of pine needles, crushed beneath hurried footsteps, and the subtle sweetness of wildflowers blooming defiantly in rocky soil. The camp is alive but subdued, fighters moving with purposeful quietude, their faces etched with determination and fatigue. Combat knife, the young courier rehearsing coded phrases with tense lips. The elderly scout whose weathered gaze has mapped these mountains countless times. Each carries the invisible scars of endless skirmishes, the weight of comrades lost and missions barely survived. Their eyes hold a shared resolve, a silent vow to endure whatever comes. The journey to the meeting point tests every ounce of your resolve and skill. The trail climbs steeply, winding precariously along cliffs that drop sheer into shadowed ravines below. The path is narrow and rocky, slick with moss and scattered pine needles that threaten to betray a misstep. Every step demands vigilance. Every sound draws your attention, a snapping twig, a bird's sudden flight, the distant echo of enemy boots. The danger is real and constant. Enemy patrols prowl these hills, their presence as pervasive as the cold mountain air. The changing landscape offers fleeting moments of beauty and relief. Dense stands of fir trees, heavy with resinous scent. Alpine meadows dotted with wild heather that blushes purple in the morning light, and crystal clear streams trickling over smooth stones, their babble a gentle counterpoint to the tension in your chest. The air carries a sharp freshness that both invigorates and reminds you of the isolation you endure here. Sunlight like deadly jewels, the skeletal remains of a burned-out vehicle half swallowed by creeping vines, and a shattered rifle lying forgotten beneath a thicket of brambles. These silent witnesses whisper of battles fought and lives lost, their stories etched into the very earth beneath your feet, a talisman of endurance and memory. As you near the rendezvous point, a small, secluded clearing nestled between two rocky ridges, your steps grow quieter, your senses sharpening to a razor's edge. The meeting must proceed swiftly and discreetly. Any misstep could invite disaster. The forest here seems to hold its breath, the usual chorus of birds and insects subdued, as if the land itself senses the gravity of the moment. You scan the perimeter carefully, noting potential escape routes, hidden thickets for cover, and vantage points for early warning. Soon, figures emerge from the shadows, the local resistance leaders, faces weathered but resolute, and the allied liaison whose quiet professionalism belies the weight of responsibility he carries. Greetings are exchanged with brief but firm handshakes, words murmured in urgent but controlled tones. The conversation threads through strategy, supply logistics, intelligence updates, and shared hopes for a coordinated strike. You listen closely, absorbing every detail. Your vigilance never falters. Your gaze flickers constantly between the group and the surrounding. Woods, every rustle, every shifting shadow, setting your nerves alight. To break the strain, you share a dry, whispered joke with the liaison, his wry smile, a brief reprieve from the seriousness that cloaks the gathering. Historians debate the overall impact of such high-risk meetings. Some dismiss them as dangerously reckless. Others praise their role in forging essential alliances. Here, in this forest clearing, you feel the truth in both perspectives. The stakes are enormous, but so too is the potential reward. As the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, the meeting concludes. The group disperses with practiced efficiency, slipping back into the embrace of the forest as shadows deepen and stars begin to twinkle overhead. The fragile fabric of resistance tighter against the unraveling forces of occupation. That night, the wooden soldier rests in your hand, a silent sentinel witnessing the day's trials and triumphs. You close your eyes, letting the crackle of burning wood and the distant chorus of nocturnal wildlife lull you toward rest. Amid the vast uncertainty, a quiet hope lingers, fragile but unbroken, carried forward on the breath of the mountain wind. The morning dawns slowly, a gentle blush of pink and gold filtering through the dense canopy above your tent. The air is crisp and cool, carrying the scent of damp earth mingled with pine resin and the faint smoke of smoldering embers from last night's fire. Stir from a restless sleep, muscles aching from the day before, and the soft rustle of the forest gradually pulls you from dreams. Around you, the camp begins to stir quiet conversations, the scrape of boots on soft ground, the low murmur of plans and preparations whispered beneath breath. This morning feels different, charged with a quiet energy as you prepare to lead a group of freshly recruited locals on their first patrol. A pivotal moment that will test their mettle and your own patience and leadership. You step out into the dawn, the chill biting at your exposed skin. The forest greets you with a cool, damp embrace, the thick canopy filtering the light into a kaleidoscope of muted greens and golds. The smell of pine needles crushed beneath hurried footsteps blends with the sweet, faint perfume of wildflowers stubbornly clinging to rocky soil. Underlying tension, your boots sink slightly into the moss-covered earth as you walk toward the gathered recruits, their faces a mixture of eagerness and apprehension, their eyes wide, untested look to you for guidance, searching for reassurance in this foreign world of danger and uncertainty. You gather the group and begin your briefing. Enthusiasm. Today's about learning, not just fighting, you say, glancing around at their attentive faces. You'll need to move like shadows, listen like hunters, and watch like hawks. And remember, if you can't sneak past a squirrel, you'll never make it past a patrol. A few chuckles ripple through the group, the tension easing just a little. Through underbrush, the adrenaline-fueled mistakes, the lessons learned in the hard school of survival. These tales, peppered with dry humor and gentle sarcasm, through dense woods where sunlight barely penetrates the thick canopy. Every step is deliberate. The forest floor is a mosaic of fallen leaves, pine needles, moss, and tangled roots threatening to trip the unwary. You teach the recruits to move silently, to step lightly, and avoid the telltale crunch of twigs beneath boots. You show them How to read the forest's subtle signissa, broken branch, disturbed undergrowth, a sudden silence among the birds that could indicate enemy presence. The recruits absorb these lessons with wide eyes and focused attention, their initial excitement tempered by the sharp reality of their surroundings. As you lead the patrol deeper into the wilderness, the terrain grows steeper and more treacherous. Rocky outcrops loom overhead, and the path narrows dangerously along cliff edges, where a misstep means a long, fatal fall. You point out edible plants and water sources, sharing knowledge that textbooks rarely convey: how to distinguish harmless herbs from deadly ones, where to find fresh water even in the driest seasons. The scent of wild herbs and damp earth fills the air, mingling with the crispness of mountain breezes that sweep through the trees. You warn them about sudden changes in weather. A mountain storm can arrive without warning, turning the forest into a maze of fog and cold that can disorient even the most seasoned fighters. Halfway through the patrol, you lead the group to a clearing that offers a breathtaking panorama of the valley below. The sun breaks through the lingering mist, illuminating patchworks of farmland, small villages, and winding rivers. The beauty of the landscape contrasts sharply with the harshness of war, a poignant reminder of what is at stake. Here, you pause to reinforce the mission's deeper purpose: not just combat, but the protection of families, homes, and a culture threatened by the tides of conflict. Your words carry weight, and you see the recruits' expressions shift from tentative to resolute, a fire kindling in their eyes. Suddenly, a sharp snap of a twig nearby freezes everyone in place. You signal for silence, your heart hammering as you scan the shadowed tree line. A lone deer bounds across the clearing, vanishing into the underbrush, and relief floods through the group, both wild and unpredictable, and that nature itself can be as much a challenge as any enemy. The recruits nod solemnly, their nervousness transformed into respect. As the patrol winds down, you notice the recruits' posture change, steps become surer, eyes more vigilant. They exchange whispered comments and tentative smiles, camaraderie budding among those who have shared their first real taste of the wilderness. The forest, once an intimidating expanse, begins to feel like a place of shared purpose and quiet strength. That evening, back at camp, you gathered the recruits around a flickering fire. The flames dance, casting long shadows on their eager faces as you recount a story of a resistance fighter who, armed with nothing but cunning and courage, outwitted a heavily armed patrol. Story unfolds, and the group leans in, captivated. The flickering light reflects in their eyes, a spark of hope amid the darkness of war. As the fire dies to glowing embers, you feel a deep satisfaction. These new fighters carry the future on their shoulders, certain, fragile, yet filled with promise. The war will continue to test you all, but tonight, here in the heart of the mountains, a new chapter begins. You awaken with a start, the distant but unmistakable rumble of artillery reverberating through the earth and into your chest. It is a low, rolling thunder, both a warning and a grim reminder that the war never truly sleeps. Outside your tent, the sky is a tumultuous canvas of slate-gray clouds, thick and heavy, moving swiftly across the heavens as if the weather itself senses the mounting tension. The air carries a sharp bite, cooler than the days before, and you catch the faint, metallic scent of impending rain mixed with the earthy aroma of damp pine needles and rich soil. The camp is unusually quiet for this early hour. The usual hum of morning activity is subdued, replaced by a taut, nervous energy as everyone prepares for the mission ahead. Today marks a critical operation, a sabotage targeting a key railway line used relentlessly by enemy forces to funnel supplies, reinforcements, and weapons deep into the occupied regions. This railway is a lifeline for the opposition, a vital artery pulsing with the machinery of war. Your task is to sever it, to slow the enemy's momentum and provide a strategic advantage to the Allies and resistance alike. The stakes could not be higher. One misstep, one slip of caution, and the entire team could be compromised. Yet, the potential reward, a disrupted supply chain, delayed enemy offensives, and saved lives, drives you forward with grim determination. You assemble your team beneath the gnarled branches of an ancient oak, a small but resilient band of fighters, a mix of hardened veterans whose faces tell tales of countless battles, and newer recruits whose eyes still gleam with a mix of fear and fierce hope. The atmosphere is thick with anticipation, unspoken fears mingling with resolute courage. You begin your briefing, voice low but steady, emphasizing the critical importance of precision, timing, and silence. Imagine sneaking into the kitchen at midnight without waking the cat. You quip with a dry smile, eliciting tired but genuine chuckles. Humor, is a fragile but vital salve against the weight of uncertainty. Beneath the levity, every member understands the gravity. The difference between success and disaster lies in the smallest details. The journey to the railway line is fraught with danger. You move under the heavy canopy of towering pines and chestnut trees, the forest alive with the scents of resin and moss, the soft crunch of pine needles underfoot, and the occasional distant call of a raven. The shadows play tricks on your eyes. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sends a jolt through your nerves. You constantly scan for signs of enemy patrols' footprints pressed in the soft earth, hastily camouflaged campsites, or the faint glint of steel from a distant sentry's bayonet. You share stories along the way, recounting lesser-known details of Italian railway sabotage during the war. How resourceful resistance fighters repurposed everything from salvaged explosives to improvised detonators, weaving deadly traps with little more than ingenuity and desperation. You mention how historians still debate the overall effectiveness of these sabotage efforts, some arguing that while they caused temporary delays, they rarely altered the strategic course. Others asserting that these acts of defiance were invaluable morale boosters and tactical distractions that strained enemy resources. Listening to these accounts, your team feels both the weight of history and the urgency of the present moment. Approaching the railway, the forest thins, and the sharp outlines of steel tracks come into view, gleaming dully beneath the overcast sky. A recently repaired bridge crosses a narrow ravine, its wooden planks fresh and splinter-free, clear, sign that the enemy is aware of the vulnerabilities here and acts swiftly to patch them. You crouch to inspect the work, noting the new welds and hastily replaced timbers. This bridge is a critical weak point and your target. With practiced efficiency, your team fans out, moving like shadows. The air is thick with tension. Every breath feels amplified in the stillness. You handle the charges with meticulous care, checking timers twice and coordinating placements to ensure maximum impact with minimum risk. The only sounds are the soft click of tools and the distant caw of a lone crow perched ominously on a bare branch. The forest itself seems to hold its breath. Suddenly, a rustling from the underbrush freezes you all mid-motion, hearts pounding. You signal for silence, muscles coiled like springs ready to snap. Was it a patrol, a scout, or something more mundane? The seconds stretch unbearably until a fox darts across the path, its russet fur a blur as it disappears into the shadows. The tension breaks in muffled laughter and relieved sighs. Your ghost patrol has come for a visit. The charges are armed and set. It's time to retreat. You lead the group carefully back through the thick woods, mindful of every step, retracing your route with cautious speed. The journey is a tense dance of shadow and silence, each member attuned to the slightest disturbance. Finally, from a concealed vantage point, you watch the explosion ignite a thunderous roar that shakes the ground beneath you and sends a towering plume of smoke and flame skyward. The railway is severed, a vital supply line crippled for now. Enemy forces scramble in confusion, shouting orders and deploying repair crews. But you know this temporary chaos grants your side a precious window of opportunity. That night, rain begins to fall softly on the tent, a rhythmic patter that soothes your frayed nerves. You sit quietly, the wooden soldier warm and smooth in your hand, a small but potent symbol of humanity amid the swirling chaos of war. The mission's success brings a fleeting sense of accomplishment, tempered by the knowledge that the struggle continues unabated. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new dangers, but for now, you allow yourself a moment of quiet pride. Even in the darkest times, small acts, stealthy, precise, and daring can tip the scales and light the way forward. You awake slowly in the fragile stillness of dawn, the first light creeping softly beneath the edges of your tent. The air is cool and crisp, tinged with the subtle scent of damp pine needles and earth that's been soaking overnight rain. A faint wisp of smoke from the dying campfire curls upward, carrying with it the memory of warmth and shared stories. Today carries a weight unlike any other, the culmination of months of struggle, hope, and quiet endurance. The resistance has planned a daring raid on a heavily fortified enemy depot, a critical hub rumored to hold munitions, food supplies, and intelligence documents vital to the occupying forces. This mission, risky beyond measure, promises a decisive blow that could tilt the balance in favor of your allies and local fighters. Failure is not an option, but the shadows you walk among are fraught with danger at every step. You gather your team in the dim light, the faces familiar but drawn tight with anticipation. No need for grand speeches. The unspoken bond, forged through shared hardship, is stronger than any words could convey. You check weapons quietly, exchange nods and glances. Heavy with understanding, the forest around you seems to hold its breath in the stillness, as if nature itself senses the gravity of what is about to unfold. The march to the target is slow and deliberate, each step measured, mindful of the brittle branches and loose stones that could betray your presence. The scent of moss and wet earth mingles with the sharper temps of metal and gun oil from your gear. The terrain grows more rugged, rocky outcrops rising sharply alongside the narrow trail, and thorny bushes snagging at your sleeves. You remind yourself and the team to stay alert. The enemy is well aware of the depot's value and has layered defenses accordingly as you approach. The sight of the depot emerges through the tree's barbed wire fences, taut and gleaming with morning dew. Watchtowers manned by alert soldiers scanning the forest edges, and the dull sheen of machine guns trained on every likely approach. The building itself is a hulking fortress of concrete and steel, cold and unyielding beneath the pale sky. You pause briefly to survey the defenses, memorizing patrol patterns and noting potential blind spots. The plan is precise: a coordinated strike aimed at disabling key guards and destroying supply caches swiftly before slipping away into the shadows. Timing is everything. Hesitation could mean disaster. The assault begins with a whispered signal, a quick flash of a hand. Your team melts into the darkness, moving with the practiced grace of ghosts. Every sense sharpens: the crunch of a leaf, the faint hiss of radios, the muffled explosion of charges setting fires that will consume enemy stores. The night air fills with smoke and the distant echoes of shouts, alarms raised too late to prevent the damage. Your heart pounds, a fierce drumbeat of defiance and determination. In the chaos, you glimpse acts of extraordinary bravery, young fighters risking everything with steady hands and quick wits, veterans coordinating with calm precision, and even civilians caught in the crossfire, showing courage that transcends fear. It is a symphony of controlled chaos, a dance on a knife's edge where every move counts. The raid concludes swiftly, the team slipping away through familiar forest trails, the distant alarms fading behind you. Exhaustion mingles with exhilaration as you share a quiet moment of triumph, a bond forged in fire and hope. That night, as the camp settles into peaceful silence, you cradle the wooden soldier talisman once more, tracing its worn edges. Reflecting on the journey, you feel the full tapestry of the warfare, humor, camaraderie, and an unyielding hope that has carried you all this far. History may debate the grand outcomes, but these small acts of resistance are the beating heart of defiance. Under a sky scattered with stars, surrounded by the soft whispers of the forest, you allow yourself a moment of peace, a breath of calm. Before the dawn, the campfire's glow softens, its flickering light casting gentle shadows that dance slowly on the faces gathered near. The forest exhales around you, a quiet symphony of rustling leaves, distant calls of night birds, and the steady rhythm of your own breathing. The weight of all the days past settles gently, now heavy with sacrifice, yet warm with shared strength. You have walked through dark woods and stormy nights, stood with comrades under cold stars, and found in small moments of laughter and courage a wellspring of resilience. Now, as the world slows to a hush, you close your eyes and let your thoughts drift like leaves floating on a soft stream. The crunch of pine needles beneath boots, the distant crackle of a fire, the sharp scent of mountain laurel weave together into a lullaby of survival and hope. You remember the quiet bravery of friends, the flicker of smiles in the face of fear, and the unspoken promise that no matter what comes, you carry forward a strength no enemy can break. Tonight, the future stretches out uncertain, fragile, vast, but for now, there is only this moment. The gentle hum of night, the slow unfolding of breath, the soft embrace of the forest. You are not alone. You are a thread in a tapestry of courage and defiance, woven tight through the dark and into the dawn. Good night, dear friend. Sleep well and dream sweetly of a world where peace finally reigns.